I've been thinking a lot about what I want to talk about, and there's so many things I want to talk about, but then I feel like it's better just keep your mouth shut, because there's just so many strange things happening in the world right now. This is very strange. So I thought one thing that I would do is, I think poetry is really important. One of the things about human beings that we're creatures, we're sentient. That's a word that they use, like sentient. So we have sentience, but we're also sapiential. Those are two nice big GRE words for you guys. But sentience is, we get sentiment from it. It's that you feel. So we're feeling beings. We have feelings. Like, you hurt my feelings, right? So we feel things. But we're also Homo sapien. So we're sapiential, we're rational creatures, we think. And so this interplay of thinking and feeling is very, very difficult to navigate in life. People either err on one side or they err on the other. But getting that balance, and that's why men and women are so important, because women tend to side more on feeling. And this is not, there are many women that are just very abstract thinkers and everything like that. We're talking generally. But our IQs are very similar. There's very little difference between men and women. Women have higher language aptitudes generally. Men have higher spatial reasoning aptitudes. I mean, these are things that are well studied, but there's always outliers in both groups. So there's men that are very sensitive, too much sentience, and then there's women that think too much reason without feeling. So you have, but we balance each other. You need both. We complement each other in that way. So, and that's why in that traditional, the yin yang, you know, they have in the yin they have the yang, and in the yang they have the yin. So it's this idea that they're both there. And if you lose that balance, it becomes really dangerous. So the thing about feeling without thinking is it creates a lot of disruption in the world. Like, just people that do things out of anger. A lot of what you see in the world, I think, is just about revenge. Like, I really think revenge motivates a lot of people. This, man who apparently killed these, or attacked the synagogue, he had just lost his kids in Lebanon. And that's obviously a Jahili impulse. That's not Islam. We all know that, right? That's not Islam. You do not go, that's what Jahiliyyah did. Like, if I was from Bani Amr and somebody from, Juhayna killed one of ours, we would go find anybody from Juhayna and kill. In fact, usually they would take two, because they would consider one of ours is worth more than two of theirs. That was Jahiliyyah. That's what the Prophet ﷺ came to eradicate from the world, was to get rid of tribal mentality. This collectivizing people. So this problem of thinking and feeling, right? This is what that man did. He was feeling without thinking. It was pure rage and emotion, anger. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ said that the shadid is not, the strong man is not the one who can throw somebody in a wrestling match. It's the one that can control their anger. وَالْقَاضِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Those who كَظَمَ غَيْظَهُ, right? They control their anger. But because that's feeling, whereas thinking is the regulating mechanism. And one of the things that the most intelligent people are people, they say, that are metacognitive, which is really what Dr. Cleary, a lot of what his teaching was about, was helping people become metacognitive, where you can actually think about your thinking, where you can actually see what's happening. So you kind of get outside of yourself and are able to see what's going on in your mind. And so one of the things about, I would argue, October 7th is a really good example of feeling without thinking. But the response is thinking without feeling. And they're both disastrous. They're just both disastrous. And if we don't learn to regulate these things, it's just going to get worse. And there is hope, though, because many things that traditionally people saw as normative are now really seen as just, in many ways, unacceptable. There are many positive things, and that's why it's really important not to let Iblis completely turn you into a cynic that just, oh, there's no hope. That's really a bad state to be in, especially when we have young people and children. And I mean, we have an obligation to be hopeful, just like we have an obligation to be joyful. You know, one of my father's teachers, he said that there's a duty to be happy, because part of the reason why the world is so miserable is there's so many unhappy people in it. Right? So why are you contributing to that? وَبِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ فَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا. With the fadl of Allah and His mercy, let them rejoice in that. Like, you don't feel the fadl of Allah? You don't feel the rahmah of Allah? I mean, I was talking to this man, he wasn't Muslim, and he was asking me about Islam. And I said, one of the things about Islam is it's basically gratitude. It's just a way of showing gratitude to your being, to your existence, to the fact that God does things, so everything for you. And he said, yeah, no, I can think of things I think God's probably done for me. And I was just like, who do you think's keeping your temperature regulated right now at 98.6? Like, you know, it's everything. Everything's God. The whole thing is God. And so once you waken up to that, you know what, you know, the adab, they say, adab al-nadri fi al-akwani an tara Allah bighayri thani. Like, the adab with creation is to see God without any secondary. أن تبصر الرازق في المرزوق وتبصر الخالق في المخلوق. That you see the provider in the provision. When you see the provision, you see the provider. You see the creator in the creation. When you look around and see everything around there, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're seeing this, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is a just very different way of looking at it. But one of the reasons why poetry was so important in our tradition is because poetry is about feeling. In Arabic, the word sha'ir means the feeler. Sha'ara means to feel. The sha'ir is the one who senses things that, and it actually comes from the same word as sha'ar. Right? So if you have to, like, people that work with their hands, like carpenters, they can't feel very subtle things because their hands become coarse. So in fact, one of the miracles of your feet is that even if you walk barefoot and become very callous like Aboriginal peoples, you don't lose the sensitivity of the feet. It's like a miracle of the feet. Because if you did, you would step on really dangerous things and not feel it, right? That's why people who get diabetes and lose that nerve sensitives, they can actually step on a tack or a nail and not feel it because they've lost that nerve sensitivity. But feeling is what the poet, they sense things, they feel things. And that's why the humanities, a lot of what the humanities was about was helping people come into their becoming more sensitive. Because with sensitivity, you become more empathic. Empathy means to feel the pain of others. Like no mercy, no quarter, no mercy. Where is that? Like, what kind of human beings talk like that? To not recognize these are sentient beings like you. They feel, they have children, they have pain, they suffer. What is that when you lose that ability to actually feel? Or you only care about yourself or your immediate family? What is that? That's not a human being, it's something else. I mean, even animals will do amazing things for other animals. Like I mean, we had, when I was young, we had a dog that this cat lost the mother, and it milked the cat. It let the kitten like suckle. I saw it with my own eyes. So you have that in Allah's creation. That's why the survival of the fittest, there was a whole other theory of, that Darwin, there was a competitive Russian theory which was all about mutuality, that there's all this mutuality in creation. Like Darwin just saw all the fighting and the strife. Whereas you can also look and see all the ecology. I mean, that's part of what Hajj Ramis teaches, is people to see how everything's integrated, how everything's working. So, in any case, that was a prelude to this poem. This poem is called The Bonfire. One of the things about war, and this is what von Clausewitz says in his book on war, is that war escalates. It's the nature of war to escalate. It gets out of control. If you look at World War I, and World War I has actually never ended. Seriously, these are just extensions of World War I. David Fromkin wrote the book, The Peace to End All Peace. World War I's never ended. Because without, what they did at the end of that war, they promised the Germans a peace without victors, and then they punished them brutally, which gave the rise to Hitler, which then creates Palestine, this huge problem in the Middle East that's still affecting us, and globally now, the whole world. It's all related. And that's why, you cannot avoid the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. None of us. You can't avoid it. Because, two things. One, it's the meeting place of the North and the South. So it's where this civilization of luxury meets a civilization of deprivation. And they're right there. Like here, it's all hidden away from us. So if you live in Los Gatos, you don't really have to go down into the Tenderloin. You might have to, for whatever reason, see a little bit of it, see the homelessness, see the horrors, go under the bridges and see what's going on. But overall, a lot of it's just hidden from us. This culture is very good. It's like garbage. They hide it really well. Like we don't think about landfills, but I guarantee you cannot keep filling these garbage cans every week with all of this stuff and millions of people doing this. Like at what point? Because civilizations actually do, and this is ancient, civilizations will literally end up drowning in their own, garbage that they created. But that's where it meets, and that's why in his amazing book, and I just read his book, Humpty Dumpty, on regime change. Because I think William Polk is one of the most important writers, and unfortunately I really regret not having met him, because he's somebody I would have really, really liked to have met, because brilliant man, incredible knowledge. He had been one of the three that was in the crisis committee during when Kennedy was dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis. He also negotiated the peace in Algeria because Kennedy was very supportive of the Algerians. He was actually voted in as a junior senator. He voted in the Senate not to send weapons to France when they were fighting the Algerians, right, during the war in Algeria, which lasted 10 years and killed 1 million Algerians. Horrific war. And he also gave Ben Bella a huge reception when he came to the United States, because there was kind of a hopeful time of, when America actually had a relatively decent reputation in a lot of places before it's been completely just destroyed. In any case, he wrote this book, Crusade and Jihad, the 1,000-Year War between the global north and the Muslim south. And when you look at this, a lot of this is about, even Caleb Carr in his book, Lessons from the History of Terror, says that this is boiling down to this global capitalistic system and fundamentalist Islam. And he said this is a disastrous for our species to have these two at each other's throats, which is happening right now. So, but he does say in that book that it's the last chapter. It boils down like this issue is not going to go away, and he considers it the central issue, Palestine and Israel. And until that's solved, it's going to be just a lot of what we're seeing. And this, in the end of the day, a lot of this is about just something that was done 100 years ago. At least it began 100 years ago. Actually more now, it's almost like 120 years. And the first Aliyah begins in the 1880s. The Ottomans were kind of pressured by the Europeans to start the migration, but by 1936, it's just boiled over, and the Arabs rebelled and lost. Brutal. What the British did was just brutal. Brutal. So this is a poem called The Bonfire, one of my favorite poets. Oh, let's go up to the hill and scare ourselves, as reckless as the best of them tonight, by setting fire to all the brush we piled, with pitchy hands to wait for rain or snow. Oh, let's not wait for rain to make it safe. The pile is ours. We dragged it bough on bough, down dark converging paths between the pines. Let's not care what we do with it tonight. Divide it? No. But burn it as one pile, the way we piled it. And let's be the talk of people brought to windows by a light, thrown from somewhere against their wallpaper. Rouse them all, both the free and not so free, with saying what they'd like to do to us, for what they'd better wait till we have done. Let's all but bring to life this old volcano, if that is what the mountain ever was, and scare ourselves. Let the wildfire loose. And scare you too, the children said together. Why wouldn't it scare me to have a fire? Begin in smudge with ropey smoke, and know that still if I repent I may recall it, but in a moment not, a little spurt of burning fatness, and then nothing but the fire itself can put it out. And that by burning out, and before it burns out, it will have roared first and mixed sparks with stars, and sweeping round it with a flaming sword, made the dim trees stand back in wider circle, done so much that I know not how much more. I mean, it shall not do if I can bind it. Well, if it doesn't, with its draft bring on a wind to blow in earnest from some quarter, as once it did with me upon an April. The breezes were so spent with winter blowing, they seemed to fail, the bluebirds under them. Short of the perch their languid flight was toward, and my flame made a pinnacle to heaven as I walked round it in possession. But the wind out of doors, you know the saying, there came a gust. You used to think the trees made wind by fanning, since you never knew. And they used to believe that the trees actually created wind. It blow, but that you saw the trees in motion. Something or someone watching made that gust. It put the flame tip down and dabbed the grass of overwinter with the least tip touch. Your tongue gives salt or sugar in your hand. The place it reached to blacken instantly. The black was all there was by daylight. That and the merest curl of cigarette smoke, and a flame slender as the hepaticus. Blood, root, and violet so soon to be now. The black spread like black death on the ground. I think the sky darkened with a cloud like winter and evening coming on together. There were enough things to be thought of then, where the field stretches toward the north, and setting sun to Hyla Brook, I gave it to flames without twice thinking, where it verges upon the road, to flames too, though in fear, they might find fuel there in withered brake, grass its full length, old silver golden rod, and alder and grapevine entanglement. To leap the dusty deadline for my own, I took what front there was beside. I knelt and thrust hands in and held my face away. Fight such a fire by rubbing, not by beating. A board is the best weapon if you have it. I had my coat, and oh, I knew, and said it out loud. I couldn't bide the smother and heat so close in, but the thought of all the woods and town on fire by me, and all the town turned out to fight for me, that held me. I trusted the brook barrier, but feared the road would fail. And on that side the fire died not without a noise of crackling wood, of something more than tinder grass and weed, that brought me to my feet to hold it back by leaning back myself as if the reins were round my head and I was at the plow. I won, but I'm sure no one ever spread another color over a tenth the space that I spread coal black over in the time it took me. Neighbors coming home from town couldn't believe that so much black had come there while they had backs turned. And if it hadn't been there when they passed an hour or so before, going the other way, and they not seen it, they looked about for someone to have done it, but there was no one. I was somewhere wondering where all my weariness had gone and why I walked so light on air in heavy shoes in spite of a scorched 4th of July feeling. Wouldn't I be scared remembering that? If it scares you, what will it do to us? Scare you. But if you shrink from being scared, what would you say to war if it should come? That's what for reasons I should like to know, if you can comfort me by any answer. Oh, but wars are not for children. It's for men. Now we are digging almost down to China. My dears, you thought that. We all thought it. So your mistake was ours. Haven't you heard, though, about the ships where war has found them out at sea, about the towns where war has come through opening clouds at night with droning speed, further o'erhead than all but stars and angels, and children in the ships and in the towns? Haven't you heard what we have lived to learn? Nothing so new, something we had forgotten. War is for everyone. For children too. I wasn't going to tell you, and I mustn't. The best way is to come up the hill with me and have our fire and laugh and be afraid. So that's starting something you can't stop. You know. Yeah.